Greetings all, and welcome to Wormwood Talks. Yeah, bet you wouldn't see this segment back on the show now, would you? It has been a long time, admittedly, and there are a couple reasons for that, but that's not what I'm here to discuss today. No. What I'm here to discuss today is something a little bit more important and very much in the moment. So, thanks to quarantine and COVID, the Pokemon card business is doing really well right now. It is experiencing a tremendous boom. Collectors are finding all kinds of stuff, they're snatching up whatever they can, getting it graded. And it's that last part that I really want to talk about today. The aspect of grading. So, right now, organizations like the PSA, for example, are completely swamped. They are drowning in cards right now, just drowning in them. And on the one hand, that's great for business, getting all this stuff in, taking commissions and whatnot, all this stuff, they're making a ton of money. It's a great time for them. But there is a problem. And it's a problem that I've seen a lot of news outlets, point out, but I don't think they've really talked too much about the actual implications of what may happen from this. See, a lot of these groups, not just the PSA, but other card grading organizations, are building more infrastructure, they're acquiring resources and land, they're trying to hire new people, all of them to try and meet the demand of this swelling enterprise, this bubble. And again, for the here and now, that's great. It's good for business, it's good for people that need jobs, that's fine and all. But I don't use the term bubble lightly, I use it for a reason. This is indeed a bubble. But not exactly the kind of bubble most people are used to. Like we hear about price bubbles, housing bubbles, stock market bubbles, all this stuff. It really refers to looking at the value of these items. However, there is something else going on here. I really can't say exactly, how much the prices will be affected by what's going on right now, but there is one thing that is being affected. Supply, obviously. This is a supply bubble of sorts. And that's a problem. That is actually a genuine problem. See, with the supply bubble, it really isn't the prices that's the problem, honestly. Sure, people will send things in, maybe they'll be rare because more, or they'll not because... Honestly, I'm not an economist. I have experience in the field, but I'm not an economist, so I really can't speak to how the prices are going to be affected by this. But I can tell you right here, right now, and by the way, again, this is all off script, so if I stumble a little bit, I apologize. This kind of bubble, when it bursts, it doesn't really hurt consumers at all. What it does hurt is people caught in the middle. And I mean between the consumers and the actual businesses doing all this card grading. The people in the middle, the employees, and even the infrastructure itself. That's what suffers when these kind of bubbles eventually burst. And trust me, it's going to burst eventually. Not in a spectacular fashion, but it is going to slow down eventually. And that's a problem. Because obviously, if you don't need a ton of people to do the job needed, if that huge influx of supply suddenly slows down and goes back to something normal, well, all those people you just hired for those jobs, you probably don't need them anymore. This isn't exactly the first time something like this has actually happened either. There's actually a pretty good historical example I can point to show just what can happen when a supply bubble bursts. Back in the late 19th century, especially in areas like Cornwall, over in the United Kingdom, Cornwall used to be a tin and copper mine, and a fairly successful one at that. The problem with mining for tin and copper, however, is that the ores are often locked with one other element, an element that, initially at least, nobody wanted anything to do with. Arsenic. And they would have this process where they could actually they would extract the arsenic from the tin and the copper and then sell the metals separately. But at the end of the 19th century and into the 20th century, however, Arsenic suddenly became the miracle object, the thing that everybody and everything must have. It was in wallpaper, it was in things like children's toys, it was in makeup, your food, your medicine, it was everywhere. Arsenic was just something you kind of threw in because, well, it seemed to do something. Obviously, this is long before people realized how dangerous arsenic actually was. And for a time, Cornwall in particular produced a tremendous amount of arsenic, more than any other contributor in the entire global market. And business was booming and great for a time. Again, this is an example of a supply bubble. There's a ton of arsenic that can be extracted here, so yeah, it was great. People paid good money for it. It was shipped across the world. Everybody wanted it. But then the bubble burst. People started to look into the effects of arsenic and noticing that people like the actual individuals in charge of making medicine with it, or those who used it for industrial purposes, they were getting sick. Seriously sick. And it was traced back to their constant exposure to this toxic element. And once people understood how dangerous it was, then nobody wanted it. Now, the card bubble going on right now, that's not going to happen. The actual desire is not going to be dropping off so sharply. But what is important to understand is that in Cornwall, almost all those mines that made arsenic, before then they made the tin and the copper, all those mines, they shut down. And pretty much for the most part, they're all abandoned. All that work and effort, all those jobs that it employed, were gone. To be fair, those who were mining arsenic, not having that job was probably a good thing for their health. But it does still highlight what can happen with these supply bubbles. It is something that doesn't happen a lot. You know, you see monetary bubbles all the time, but supply bubbles really do need special conditions to operate. And arsenic, it just happened to be the thing that everybody wanted until nobody wanted it. I don't think that the current issues going on with the grading system for Pokemon cards and cards in general of any type, of any trading card organization or group or what have you, I don't think it's going to hit them as hard. But it's important to realize that right now we are feeding a system that is ultimately going to result in people probably losing their jobs. How many? I can't say. You know, I don't really know per se, and I'm not exactly the biggest aficionado on this. But there will be a setback. There will be consequences. And on top of all that, if that's not enough, the wait times for getting your cards graded at some of these places now, maybe 9 to 12 months. A year. I don't know about you, but I've been collecting for a long time, and I don't exactly feel very comfortable sending my stuff off to some organization to get it graded and not know where the heck it is for a year. I do not want to take that risk. If you wish to, that's up to you. Again, how this affects the price and value of cards, it's hard to say right now. It's always hard to say when you're in the middle of a bubble. You can always look back after it bursts, you know, but right now there's no telling what's going to happen. So, if you have your own Pokemon cards or other things you want to send in, keep in mind, 1, you're going to have some long time of waiting before they get graded. And 2, most importantly, understand that you shouldn't feel guilty for what you want to do, but if you really want to make sure that people are going to stay where they are, don't just send a crap ton of cards, you know, be selective. Try to think of the people who have to do this job, because again, they're hiring out the wazoo and they're still being overwhelmed, but eventually this bubble is going to burst. So, what you decide to do with your cards, that's up to you. Personally, me, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait, 1, because I don't want to wait a year just to find out that maybe something happened and my stuff got lost in the mail. Because that has happened, and I'm not risking that. What you do is your decision, but just realize that right now the Pokemon card business, it is booming, but eventually that bubble will burst. And again, I can't speak to the price, but I do feel sympathy for those that are being hired for these jobs, knowing that eventually when this is all over, unless they're, top notch at what they're doing, they're probably going to be out of a job. It's a cycle, and I'm not mad about it, but I think it is something to recognize. I think it's something that we need to be able to understand and know that in time that's what's going to happen. Either way, I'm never going to stop collecting cards, and I encourage people to not stop either. If you have the cash and you really want to get into it, hey, go for it. Just be aware that right now, this is a time where everybody is trying to do the same thing all at once. And business may be booming, but eventually, things will settle down. And what happens then? Well, who knows? Let us all just hope one thing. Let us all just hope for one thing. Let us just hope that when this eventually does die down, that few people are severely hurt by it. Let us at least hope that whatever happens, that they'll be able to figure something out for all these people they're hiring. So, yeah, that's my take on it. Video will be up, next one I should say, video will be up in a few days. And as a small aside, the next video that you're going to be seeing from this channel, it's going to be a little bit different. It might be structured the same as any other Pokemon video, but I do have one thing to note. There's going to be a very, very special guest taking part in it. I don't know what many people will think of her, but I can tell you this. She has done me a world of good in my life, at least last few years, and I certainly hope that when you get to meet her, you may come to like her just as much as I do. With that, everybody, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you later.